The winners of the 4 major Feast Week tournaments all got massive bumps in this week's new AP poll, and that's exactly what we need in college basketball.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national hoop show out there. I'm your host today, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for dialing in with us. We got a great show. We're going to talk with Jason Jordan, our guy from Sports Illustrated, about some of the crazy SEC freshmen. We're going to join with Candace Cooper, the host of Locked On ACC, to talk about the beginning of the last ACC Big Ten Challenge. But before we do, we're going to talk about the newest AP poll and some teams that took massive leaps. Today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks, which is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing that you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30, $30 stinking dollars off your order. All right, so these teams that are just making this big leap, I love to see it because here's a thing that you need to know about me. I detest preseason polls. As a fan of college basketball, as somebody in sports media, I love it because it gives me great stuff to talk about. But I don't like it because I feel like it gives preconceived notions about what a team will or won't be in the course of a season just based on expectations. And then a team, I feel like teams are often unfairly treated because of those off-season expectations, high or low, and then they're not fairly moved up and down. It's especially true in the transfer portal era where people are like free agency all over the place, where you just don't know what a team is going to have as people transfer up and down levels, newcomers, freshmen, all this stuff. I wish we didn't have preseason rankings. I wish we could wait a couple weeks in to the season, see what's actually happening on the court, and then start ranking teams. That said, if we're going to get what happened in this week's AP poll, massive reactions to massive results in basketball games, I'm here for it. To wit, the 4 winners of the 4 biggest Feast Week tournaments, that would be the Maui Invitational, the Battle for Atlantis, the Phil Knight Invitational Tournament, and the Phil Knight Legacy Tournament, all got massive bumps in the AP poll. Let's look at them just really quick, and then we'll take some of those. Purdue won the Phil Knight Legacy and had the biggest jump. They moved up 19 spots in the newest AP poll, all the way into the top 5. UConn won the Phil Knight Invitational, moved up 12 spots, all the way to 8th. Arizona won the Battle for Atlantis. Boy, that offense is something. Up 10 spots all the way to 4th in the nation. And Tennessee, midweek, won the Maui Invitational, and they're up 9 spots all the way to 13th. They've been the biggest ping pongers so far. They took a massive fall down to 22nd after that loss to Colorado and just jumps right back up. And this is what I love to see. I don't want to see, oh, you won this tournament. Congrats. You get to move up 2 spots. If a team is proving themselves on the court to be awesome, then they should be ranked as such. And that's what we're seeing here. On Monday's show, Andy Patton and I both projected that Houston and Texas would be number 1 and 2 in some order. Andy said Houston, I said Texas. He was right. I was wrong. I will always own that. I anticipated the top 5 would actually include 3 teams out of the state of Texas, with Baylor being the 3rd. But I just based on what usually happens, I didn't think either Arizona or Purdue would leapfrog them all the way into the top 5. But that's exactly what happens. And frankly, while I would love to see Baylor up there, I can't fault AP voters for putting Purdue and Arizona in the top 5, with Virginia, by the way, is 3rd, and Baylor sits right behind that top 5 at 6th. I just thought it would be cool for one state to have 3 of the top 5. Let's take some of these tournament winners. Purdue. Man, they go so far all the way up. They even got 8 first place votes in this thing. That's how good people think they are. By the way, shouts to Gary Parrish, one of CBS college basketball writers, who noted that all 5 of their starters were ranked outside the top 90 in their high school class, beating teams like Gonzaga and Duke along the way. You think about Duke's starting 5, who is wholly different than that. And that's just what makes college basketball so great, is seeing stuff like that happen. The biggest takeaway with Purdue specifically for me is Zach Edey has taken a massive leap this year. I don't know whether it's getting Travion Williams out of the way in the paint or whatever it is, but this dude is on another level now, as one of the early front runners for not only Big Ten Player of the Year, but he's got to be in the National Player of the Year conversation. We had so much conversation this preseason about the Big 5 bigs being Drew Timme, Oscar Tshiebwe, Armando Bacot, Trace Jackson Davis, and Hunter Dickinson. But man, we're starting to see emerge. I want to have a conversation about the top 5 outside of the top 5, some of whom are on these teams we're talking about. Zach Edey at Purdue, and then we move to UConn, where Adama Sanogo is just having a year. And as part of that, helped UConn win the Phil Knight Invitational bracket. And, that's a bracket that included Alabama and preseason number 1 North Carolina. No, it was UConn winning that thing. And so thankfully they move up 12 spots all the way to number 8. And with Villanova being just bad, they're 2-5 right now. UConn is looking like the Big East favorites early on. As for Arizona, seeing them move all the way up to 4th, when you watch what this offense is and you see everything that they did to win their, I think I said they won Battle for Atlantis. They won Maui. It was Tennessee winning Battle for Atlantis over Kansas. Forgive me for flipping that earlier. If I did, you'll have to let me know. Just tell me in the comments if I got it wrong. But man, Arizona and what they're doing, another big in Umar Ballo, who is having a great start to this year. And after losing the guys they did to the NBA, I did not expect this from Arizona. I expected them to be good, but not top 5 good in the country. As for Tennessee, I've been critical of their guard play early in the season with Santiago Vescovi, Zakai Ziegler, and others. And finally, they're starting to come around. Vescovi had a really solid game against Kansas in the championship game of Battle for Atlantis. And so, man, encouraged to see that from Tennessee, who I believe is a top 10 team this season. Another interesting thing is we've got this interesting clump of blue bloods in the top 25 from 17 to 21. Kansas is a little bit higher, but here are the teams ranked 17th to 21st this week: Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Michigan State, UCLA. You hear that? Again, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Michigan State, UCLA, all in this like 15 to 20 range. I mean, I guess technically 17 to 21. So it's going to be interesting to watch each of these squads try to figure out what they are. Duke, they're not getting elite production from their highest elite level freshman. It's Kyle Filipowski, who was 3rd billed, that is doing the most of it right now. North Carolina lost in the Phil Knight Invitational to both Iowa State and Alabama. They're trying to get things figured out. Some of the backcourt issues I talked about with Tennessee, Carolina's issues right now are with their backcourt, with Caleb Love and RJ Davis taking too many of their shots. Kentucky, I thought would be better along as a veteran team, returning Severe Wheeler and Oscar Tshiebwe. But they've dropped a couple with Tshiebwe in the lineup, by the way. Michigan State's without Malik Hall for a couple weeks. And so they're going to be interesting to see what they are without him. And then UCLA is just, they're going to be a top 20, maybe even top 15 team, but we've got to see some more out of them. I think it's clear and obvious that they don't have Johnny Juzang anymore, and that they need somebody like Jaime Jaquez to step up and not force Tiger Campbell, their point guard, to be their main dominant scorer. He needs to be the playmaker, and that's what they need. Now, we are going to move on to talking about Monday night kicked off the ACC Big Ten Challenge. What we found out was the last one ever. It started off with a Virginia Tech victory over Minnesota, and then Pittsburgh in the second game finishes off Northwestern in Chicago. The ACC has a 2-0 lead, but is it going to hold on Tuesday and Wednesday? We will have to find out. But first, This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays are here, and you can achieve gifting greatness when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha Steaks. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together special curated gift packages to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. So go to omahasteaks.com and use code LOCKEDON at checkout to get $30 off your order. Send an assortment of mouthwatering favorites guaranteed to impress, like the legendary Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, and even easy-to-prepare comfort meals ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is the perfect gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. So order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. It's great to be joined on Locked On College Basketball today by the Locked On ACC host, Miss Candace Cooper, one of the greatest swimmers you will ever get to know in your entire life. She is a baller. And Candace, here's the big bombshell we got on Monday is that the ACC Big Ten Challenge, which has been in action for over 2 decades, is going away thanks to all the money and TV contracts and everything else. Andy Katz broke that news on Monday morning that this will be the last year of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, also the SEC Big 12, because starting next year, we will get ACC and SEC going at it. What are your thoughts on this whole big change?
You know, ACC, SEC, say that 3 times fast. It certainly is going to be fun for all of us who have to report this bad boy. But I think it just speaks to where we are now from a college athletic standpoint, and that, you know, the almighty dollar is starting to rear its lovely head. And as much as we want to act like TV deals and all the things don't matter, it truly does. And it's unfortunate that we can't see some of this rich tradition carry on. But at the same time, maybe it'll be better for us. Get something fresh eyes. SEC has certainly come up from a basketball standpoint, and there will be some, you know, classic matchups, whether it's Duke and Kentucky, Carolina or Kentucky, you know, some other LSUs coming up and all the things. So maybe we'll have an opportunity just to make some new rivalries or, you know, birth some of that. Alabama, North Carolina, who knew that could have been, you know, a future rivalry, and it's sub 4 overtimes later, you know. So I think it's a great opportunity for, you know, good basketball and really getting some guys to have more eyes from across that national standpoint, because we all know SEC, you know, carries well and they bring that viewership.
Absolutely. And I mean, to your point, it's like the way the Big Ten has kind of filled out across the conference, the ACC, ever since it brought in all those Big East schools, just hasn't been the same. And so maybe it's actually a little more competitive. As we look back, folks will remember the ACC swept the first decade of this challenge, literally the first 10. But it's been the Big Ten dominating this thing since, including winning the last 3 in a row. And spoiler alert, they're going to take 4 in a row the way things are going to go. That's just the reality of it. And so do you see a world in which this might actually be a better conference matchup?
You know, I think that ultimately the ACC right now as a whole, as a unit, we're struggling from a basketball, football, whatever sport besides soccer, maybe in field hockey, as a unit, we're struggling. So I think that just giving them an opportunity to maybe have some like emotionally better or more elevated gameplay, especially early on in the season when we're trying to talk about longevity and good losses, bad losses, and all that fun stuff when we talk about tournament time and who we're going to be able to add on the back end. So I'm hoping that, you know, this SEC, you know, opportunity is going to be good for our conference. And I think it will. I think that it'll just elevate, you know, games early on, punch people in the mouth early, get that regroup, kind of find that identity come December, and really roll into conference play, which is always, you know, a good time here in the ACC.
Absolutely. And per Andy Katz's tweet, this event is going to happen at the same time that the ACC Big Ten Challenge usually happens the week after Thanksgiving. So no difference calendar-wise there. Now, Candace, let's shift attention a little bit because this thing ain't blown up yet. We do have one more year of the ACC Big Ten. And so we have 2 games on last night. We're recording this before either of those games end. That's Minnesota at Virginia Tech, Pitt at Northwestern. So we don't know the results of those games. But as we start to look at this thing, I'm not finding many places where the ACC is going to get wins. I mean, when we look at the KenPom numbers of it, listen to this, Candace. The Big Ten has 6 top 25 KenPom teams, 11 top 50 Ken Palm teams out of their 14 teams. The ACC, conversely, only has 3 top 25 Ken Palm teams and 6 top 50 teams. So the Big Ten has as many top 25 Ken Palm teams as the ACC has top 50 Ken Palm teams. Can the ACC find enough victories in this thing to win?
I don't think it'll happen this season, but, I do think it'll be a good showing. I think for what people know for November and this early December basketball to be, teams are still figuring it out. They're still figuring out rotations. They're still figuring out who they are as a program. So I think there's ample time to catch somebody slipping, have an off night, catch somebody hot shooting and all that fun stuff. But there are certainly, there's a great divide. Even when you look at the ACC, the top is the top, and then it tears down pretty heavily, especially with the men's side. So it's going to be ugly for the ones that aren't exactly doing well right now. That's for
exactly.
Sure.
And we often laugh at, so the Big Ten has 14 teams, ACC 15. So there's always a team that has to sit out. This year it's NC State. And a lot of people I know in the North Carolina area laughing about that because it's like, oh, the Wolfpack. Listen, the Wolfpack is currently at Ken Palm the 6th best team in the ACC. The ACC wishes it had the Wolfpack playing in this event. So looking at it, here are Tuesday's matchups. We already talked about Monday. Tuesday, Penn State at Clemson, Maryland at Louisville. I mean, nothing there. Syracuse at Illinois, Wake Forest at Wisconsin, Georgia Tech at Iowa, Virginia at Michigan. That projects to easily be the most, at least, viewed game of Tuesday night. As you hear any of those you see going the ACC's way?
I really think that Virginia is a team right now that they had the returners. They have the storylines that North Carolina is presenting, but they're actually delivering when it comes to bringing guys back. Hate to say it, love my school, but here we are.
Yeah.
I think Virginia is certainly a team that's getting back in the right position to be successful. When I look at Wake Forest and Wisconsin, I think that's sort of a toss-up. Wisconsin certainly has a staple program, but I think what Steve Forbes is doing at Wake Forest is certainly something to be commendable. He has gone in the transfer portal. I don't think Alanis Williams is walking through that door, but you definitely have some guys that are certainly willing to put in the fight. And Georgia Tech always has those hit or miss programs. Iowa is Iowa. They never, seem to be terrible. I don't think Illinois and Syracuse, poor Syracuse. They're struggling with teams that you have to Google where they're located, right? and then for Clemson and Penn State, you're like, Clemson, sometimes you show me something good. But all in all, I think it's going to be, edge of Big Ten when it's all said and done for these Tuesday matchups.
Okay, let's turn our attention then to Wednesday. And this is where we typically get some of the more dynamic matchups. Just kind of going through it. Ohio State at Duke. Interesting there. Purdue at Florida State. Man, preseason, I was super excited about this matchup. Now Purdue's just like, when do we tip again? All right, we got, you know what I'm saying? Rutgers down at Miami. UNC at Indiana, Michigan State at Notre Dame, and Boston College at Nebraska. Let's take a little run around Wednesday night. Candace, what are you looking at for tomorrow's slate?
I would love North Carolina and Indiana to be a matchup of all matchups, and maybe it will be, right? North Carolina coming off 2 losses, not expecting to get punched in the mouth quite like they were at the Phil Knight Invitational, so maybe they can bounce back in a big way. Hopefully Caleb Love doesn't shoot every shot in the gym, but who knows? There's lessons to be learned at invites, right? I think Ohio State and Duke is going to be the best matchup of the evening.
Too. I'm with you.
The way the Blue Devils have been playing, the way they have, gained confidence, they have lost some tough matchups. They've gotten humbled a little bit, but that's exactly what you need in November so you can excel in March. So I'm not really worried about them. I think they also have a really good coach who is figuring out how to utilize all of his skill players at once. And so I'm excited for that one. And then I will say Michigan State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame is always a team. Lajewski, I'm like, is this man 45? When does he graduate? How many threes do you need to keep shooting in order to have the, NCAA record? My God.
Him and Kihei Clark are rolling in wheelchairs together.
I'm just saying,
when Virginia plays.
When does the COVID eligibility thing end? Because my guy has been here for quite a time. So I remember him giving us the business at North Carolina. So I'm just like, okay. So I think Coach Bray, he's really, really an excellent coach, one of the best in the business. So I think you never can count them out. And then with Boston College and Nebraska, honestly, Boston College is a fun team. They are figuring out who they are. Coach Grant is in his 2nd year. And of course, He has a couple of new guys, and they're just flowing, right? They're not the team that everyone expects, but you can't count them out. They give me, Steve Forbes vibes in the sense of like, we don't expect anything, so might as well just have fun and maybe we get a couple good, upsets out of it.
Absolutely. And who knows? For all we said, like you said, teams are figuring out rotations. Purdue's going to go down to Tallahassee, and Leonard Hamilton's going to suddenly figure something out, and that'll be that's not going to happen. Unfortunate to see there. And so, as you said, Candace, I don't see a path to 8 victories for the ACC. It really seems like Big Ten should come away with their 4th straight ACC Big Ten challenge. Give me one maybe just storyline that you're watching for that maybe people haven't really thought of or paid much attention to with the ACC yet.
I think the ACC is just, as much as we try and write them off, they always find a way to bring a lot of teams in the tournament when it's all said and done. I mean, last season we were saying it was only going to be 1 or 2 that made NCAA tournament for the men's side, and it ended up being guys were going almost all the way for like at least 4 programs. So say all that to say, don't get overreact. It's college basketball. These guys are going through things. They're figuring out who they are. Give it time. Don't start judgment calls until I would say early February. Then we can start, saying, all right, they are who we are. They are who we thought they could be, or not. They aren't. So I'd say just have a little more patience. But if you are frustrated, there is always a great side of women's basketball in the ACC, and they're rolling. So I'm just saying, if you want to support some people, there's a lot of love to go around in college basketball.
Love to see it. And yes, man, such great women's basketball going on in the ACC. Lots of highly ranked teams. Go check out all the great action there. Candace Cooper, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Always great to have our brother Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated, their director of basketball recruiting, to join us on Locked On College Basketball. And by the way, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Jason, we are about 3+ weeks into the season now. Great feast week last week, man. Just eating all the turkey, watching all the basketball, all over some nice tropical locations. And one of the things that has struck me early this season is just the high level that so many SEC freshmen are playing at. So what I want to do, if we can, is just name a couple of them off. There might even be others that fall outside the realm of this that we won't bring up. And then I just want us to be able to have a conversation about some of them, maybe thinking back to what you saw in recruiting, some of those kind of things. So let's just name some of them. Brandon Miller at Alabama, leading scoring freshman in the nation, although might come down a little bit after he was held somewhat in check by North Carolina. Although when you play an extra 20 minutes, that kind of helps things. Right. Cason Wallace at Kentucky, fantastic defender. Looks like he's got a really smooth stroke. You got Gigi Jackson at South Carolina, who famously reclassified and then committed to his home state Gamecocks. Julian Phillips at Tennessee has started to make some waves for them. You got Anthony Black at Arkansas, who was the second most heralded player on his own team. But we haven't seen Nick Smith yet. Little KG from Coach Muss about when we're going to get to see who's, quite frankly, in Nick Smith, the highest projected NBA pick out of this whole group. But if he's hurt, what's going to happen? So, listen, Jason, that's a whole cavalcade of names I've just thrown at you. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Anthony Black, just because, to your point, Nick Smith isn't playing right now. And, obviously that he's had to step up. But, it's one thing to have to, take up some slack. It's another thing to be a freshman, have to take up some slack, and then actually take up the slack.
He's doing it.
He has no reference point at this level, so I got to give him a bigger nod. But not shocking at all. Anthony Black was one of my favorite players in the class. 6'7", point guard. Point guard skill set, runs the offense, calls his own number, high IQ, long, quick, shifty, knocks down shots, and he gets everybody involved really well, as everybody's seeing. So none of that is shocking to me.
And the hair, it's beautiful.
No, it's what was it? Tiger Campbell. It's a wrap. Tiger, your reign is over. Your reign on the top was short, like Leprechaun.
We just got to get our guy Anthony Black with pull it back somehow, man. It's how do you play?
Yeah, like he might be he might be leading freshmen in scoring if he could see, So,
so legitimately, like if and when Nick Smith comes back, and we hope he does, like we never like to see injuries. We always want to see these young men out there. How much of a chemistry conversation do we need to have of working in who we've already said is the projected highest college choice in next year's NBA draft into this team that at this point is already almost a month into their games? How does Coach Musselman go about working in who should be the best player on his team, but is also a freshman?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that it's early, right? So you don't want to work them in March. That is not good. We've got a lot of references of where that didn't really work out.
Yeah.
But
Michael Porter is a great example of that.
Absolutely. Kyrie Irving back in the day when Nolan couldn't kind of get it going with that. So, but Nick Smith is that good. Now, the good thing is Nick Smith is also an amazing teammate, right? So he's not a guy who's going to be chucking shots and, hey man, just it's not what I make, it's what I take. It's he's not that guy. He's a guy who's going to get everybody involved. He's going to get to the rack. If his shot is not falling, he's going to get to the rack, right? And so, to go for more high percentage shots to build his confidence. He's really smart like that. So he's not a guy who needs 20. Like he could get 10, 5 and 5 and feel like he was the most dominant player on the court, and he probably would be. Yeah. Just on that team, they got to travel an all-star team.
Man,
so
that's crazy.
And they're really clicking. So you're gonna have to make room for Nick because he's that good. The good thing is he has it upstairs. He's not an egomaniac.
That's great.
Which is rare. Sorry.
It's very absolutely.
He's the highest rated NBA guy in that league. So, that tends to come with a few things. But I mean, he's just an extraordinary teammate. Great guy. And he has it upstairs. He knows how to play basketball, which is usually the curve for freshmen. So I think it'll be a little bit of a process, but I don't think it'll be huge. I don't think it'll be a big gelling problem.
Let's go to Cason Wallace at Kentucky. This dude already seems like one of the best defenders in the SEC to me, just a couple, 6-7 games into his college career. But for him, it's not just defense, man. That shot looks sweet to me as well. What do you see in Cason Wallace?
Yeah, well, I'd say always a bulldog on both ends of the floor, picking up 94 feet, but runs the offense, gets his shots, gets to his spots on the court. And, he's averaging, what is he averaging? Like 12, 5.
Yeah, I'll pull it up while you're
around the game. Yeah. 12, 5 and 4, something like that. Had really good games against the better teams. And, I know they took a couple losses, but he's the best chance they have at getting deep in March, getting to that second weekend in March.
Yeah, he's averaging 11.8 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and shooting 47.6 from 3. I mean, come on.
That's crazy. Yeah. So see, the thing about him is it's all upstairs. Like he's just a high IQ guy, always makes the right basketball play. We talk about that a lot, but it's so true because it's so underrated, especially when you're able to score in the manner that he is, because he can score on all 3 levels. You just said he's shooting 47%. That's even better than high school, but he was a pretty good shooter in high school. So he's obviously worked on that. And then he just picks his spots well, So, when he's able to get a piece of the paint kick out, that's how he gets the 5 assists. But with him at the helm, Kentucky's always definitely going to be a threat, and definitely going to be a threat to get deeper in March as he's just getting better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got to keep shooting because Severe Wheeler, is not as much of a shooting threat. Now, I want to move down to Brandon Miller at Alabama. Staying in the state of Alabama last year, man, we saw Jabari Smith just kind of unicorn in some ways, to steal a Chet Holmgren word we heard a lot. And early returns for me is that Brandon Miller has a very similar skill set. He's a little bit shorter, but I'm seeing a lot of Jabari Smith in him. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. And he might even be a little bit more fluid.
I think so.
I think Brandon's shooting.
He's more of a playmaker.
Yeah, and Brandon's shooting something like 47 or 48 from 3 too, if I'm not mistaken.
He had a game, I forget against who. He hit 7 of 9 from 3.
Yeah.
So he's averaging 19.6 points, shooting 48% from 3 at a high, and he's taken high volume too. That's
yeah. I mean, that's insane, right? That's insane. So I would say he's a little more fluid. Obviously, shoots. I gotta say, shoots better now because this is where we're recording. It could go down over the season, but I mean, 48%. I mean, that's
24-50 is the number.
Oh man, yeah, that's closing your eyes and making
in
it,
7 games. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean that's that's a good sample size too. So
that's right.
Yeah, Alabama's a juggernaut. We saw that yesterday against a really quality Carolina team, who a lot of people picked to get to the Final Four. And then he hit that big 3 in the third overtime.
Yep.
Huge momentum shift there.
And that's great. You talk about the headspace after he'd been kind of shut out through a lot of the day to keep battling and had 4 fouls. I'm always interested to see how a freshman is able to handle himself with 4 fouls, and he did that very well.
Yeah, most of them pack it in and make some stupid foul and frustration. But to your point, I was watching that too. He definitely played very smart and came up big for him down the stretch and knocked that 3 down in the third overtime. So, yeah.
Well, Jason, let's wrap up by talking about who was going to be the most heralded freshman coming into the 24 class is Gigi Jackson, who is playing for his home state, South Carolina Gamecocks, under a new coaching regime.
Yeah. So, the thing now they're not winning, right? They're 2-3. They're under 500, but okay, nobody expected them to, challenge for a 3 seed. All right, let's just get that out the way.
We got some Ben Simmons at LSU vibes.
Yeah, Gigi's knocking down a 40% clip from 3. I think he's at 17 a game or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's doing what he's supposed to do. 17 and 8, I think he's averaging for the year.
17 and 8. That's right.
Is that right?
Just shy of 7 or just shy of 8 on rebounds. Yeah, 7-7.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing with them was like, who's going to get them the ball? Because this just sorry, South Carolina, but come on.
It is what it is.
Yeah, 3 scores, right? So we're like, who's going to get them the ball? But I mean, Gigi obviously 6'8", does everything on the floor. Can knock down shots. He's obviously been working on it. I said the biggest thing about his game offensively was his perimeter jump shot, but he's knocking down 40% from 3.
Yep.
So he's obviously worked on that. And then he gets pretty good looks. But at 6'8", he does everything. That hadn't changed. So, that's going to transition, into production. That's what we were all thinking. And the biggest thing was, where would the help come from? And I think that's still the problem. Be clear, that's still 2 and 3. But he's putting up numbers, and I think that's, I think he's good. I think he's okay with that. I think he's good with his production.
Man, that's so great. And what's going to be fun about all these dudes we've talked about, Jason, is we're going to get to see a lot of them play against each other throughout this SEC season. It's going to be a lot of fun to keep tabs on. And obviously, we'll have to talk more about them as the season wears on. Jason Jordan, as always, brother, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for all your great insight and intel.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode of Locked on College Basketball. My thanks to Candace Cooper and to Jason Jordan for joining us on today's show. Make sure to make your next listen Locked on Sports today. Check out the podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and of course, the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and anywhere else you get podcasts. Please don't forget, if you would, subscribe to the show, smash the like button for those of you watching, and leave some comments on your thoughts on the top 5 in the nation. Thanks so much for diving in with us. Tomorrow, our guy Andy Patton will be back with you. And until then, peace.